From an evil father's deeds, to serial killers, to the paranormal, here are 25 creepy photos that send chills down your spine and come with disturbing backstories that defy belief. Jeannie Wiley, known as the Feral Child, was discovered in California in 1970. At 13, she could barely walk. Her father had kept her in a makeshift straitjacket and tied her to a children's toilet in a locked room. He would growl and bare his teeth at her like a dog if she made any sound or did something he disliked. These harsh conditions prevented her from learning to walk or speak. This photo was taken at a hospital right after her rescue. Sadly, her life in abusive institutions continued afterward. Jeannie's current whereabouts are unknown. Moving on to the unsettling tale of Major General Horatio Gordon Robley and his eerie fascination with Maori heads. Long before European colonizers arrived in New Zealand, the Maori people had a unique and significant tradition of preserving the heads of their fallen enemies. These preserved heads, known as mokomokai, were treated with great care. The heads were severed, boiled, smoked, dried in the sun, and then dipped in shark oil. The preserved heads were often displayed or paraded as trophies. This practice was deeply rooted in Maori culture and held significant spiritual and social meaning. When the British arrived in New Zealand in the 1840s, they disrupted many of the Maori traditions, including the practice of mokomokai. The British, fascinated by these preserved heads, began to collect them. One notable figure was Major General Horatio Gordon Robley. Robley served in the British Army during the New Zealand Land Wars in the 1860s. He had a particular fascination with Maori culture and managed to collect at least 35 mokomokai. This old, eerie photo shows Robley with his connection of Maori heads, a stark reminder of the cultural clash and exploitation during that time. The Maori people faced significant changes and challenges with the arrival of European colonizers. Their traditions, including the practice of mokomokai, were often misunderstood and exploited. The British took many of these heads back to Europe, where they became curiosities and were displayed in museums and private collections. This period marked a painful chapter in Maori history, as their cultural practices were desecrated and commodified by colonizers. Despite these challenges, the Maori people have worked to reclaim their heritage. Efforts have been made to repatriate mokomokai from foreign museums and collections back to New Zealand. But next, consider the psychological toll of crafting dolls from the dead. Anatoly Moskvin, a former Russian journalist and college professor, gained notoriety as a necropolist due to his disturbing hobby involving cemeteries. With extensive knowledge of burial sites, Moskvin's macabre obsession led him to desecrate graves and transform the corpses he exhumed into dolls. Over the years, Moskvin crafted these human dolls from the bodies of deceased individuals. These dolls, totaling 26 in number, were not mere creations to him. He considered them companions and even claimed to have romantic feelings for them. He described kissing one of the dolls made from the body of an 11-year-old girl multiple times. Authorities began to suspect Moskvin as graves in his hometown of Nizhny Novgorod were found disturbed. In 2011, police finally apprehended him. Upon searching his home, they made the chilling discovery of these life-size dolls. which were essentially mummified corpses, meticulously dressed and arranged throughout his residence. Mostovin's case shocked the world with its gruesome details and the extent of his obsession with the dead. His actions not only violated the sanctity of the deceased, but also raised profound questions about mental health and the boundaries of human behavior. The aftermath of his arrest prompted discussions about cemetery security and the protection of grave sites against such disturbing acts. Deep in the shadows of a grand French mansion, a woman lay hidden for 25 years. Who could have kept her there, and why? In 1901, French authorities responded to an anonymous tip about a woman held captive in a house in Poitiers. Upon entering the aristocrat's home, they discovered a horrifying scene in the attic. A skeletal, middle-aged woman laying on a straw mattress. The room was pitch black, filled with insects, rotting food, and reeked of decay. Despite the stench, officers identified the woman as Blanche Monnier, who had been imprisoned there for 25 years. Blanche weighed only 55 pounds, barely clinging to life after enduring decades of isolation and squalor. Shockingly, her captive was revealed to be none other than her own mother. The discovery sparked outrage and disbelief across France and beyond. The idea that a mother could imprison her own daughter for so long shocked the public's conscience. The case of Blanche Monnier highlighted the extremes of human cruelty and the horrors that can occur behind closed doors. It raised questions about familial relationships, mental illness, and the responsibilities of caregivers. Blanche's rescue led to widespread reforms in France regarding the protection of vulnerable individuals and the handling of abuse cases. During the Victorian era, photography emerged as a revolutionary medium, shaping cultural practices and memorial traditions. Originating in 1839 with the daguerreotype, photography quickly became commercialized, including the capturing of deceased individuals. This practice, known as post-mortem photography, gained popularity amidst high mortality rates, particularly among children, where over 125 deaths per 1,000 births occurred until the 1890s. Unlike costly painted portraits, post-mortem photography offered an affordable means for families to commemorate loved ones. Photographers skillfully posed the deceased, sometimes painting eyes to simulate vitality, creating poignant yet eerie images that reflected Victorian mourning customs. This period saw a convergence of technical advancement and cultural acceptance, making death photography accessible to the middle classes. Queen Victoria's endorsement of mourning culture further popularized postmortem photography. Her perpetual mourning attire following the death of her husband set a fashionable precedent for grief. This cultural shift extended to America, where mourning attire and memorial trinkets became commodified items linked to the proliferation of death photography. Technically, post-mortem photographs differed from standard portraits due to the absence of subject movement. Long exposure times necessitated stillness, resulting in sharp, detailed images that contrasted with the blur often seen in portraits of the living. Props such as flowers or books accompanied the deceased, enhancing the narrative quality of these photographs. Beyond Britain, Eastern Europe, particularly Poland, adopted similar practices in the mid-19th century. Photographers like Carl Bayer documented not only the deceased, but also funeral rites. The Young Pioneers. A youth organization founded in 1922 in Soviet Russia served as a platform for children aged 10 to 15 to learn practical skills and embrace communist ideals. This organization emerged after the banishment of the Scouts, who were seen as unsupportive of the new communist regime. Despite its theoretical voluntary membership, societal pressure ensured nearly universal participation among eligible children. During World War II, known in Soviet times as the Great Patriotic War, The young pioneers played a significant role in the war effort. With up to 5 million members, they contributed to state farms and collected 134,000 tons of scrap metal for recycling into war materials. The pioneers also took on the responsibility of maintaining the graves of fallen soldiers, demonstrating their dedication to both practical support and commemoration. Amidst the turmoil of war, young pioneers were not shielded from its realities. They engaged in activities that mirrored the adult war effort, such as grenade practice and participating in resistance movements in German-occupied territories. Some members even received high military honors for their bravery, highlighting the profound impact of war on youth. 4 children for sale. The photograph, 4 Children for Sale, captured a poignant moment in 1948 Chicago, showing Lucille Chalafou turning away from the camera as her 4 children sat beneath a "For Sale" sign. Published by the Vedette Messenger of Valparaiso, Indiana, it quickly gained widespread attention. The Chalafou family faced eviction, leading the unemployed coal truck driver and his wife to consider selling their children as a last resort. Although there have been doubts about whether the photo was staged, the underlying story was tragically real. All 4 children, along with the unborn child Lucille carried at the time, were indeed sold. Shockingly, one of the girls later revealed she was sold for a mere $2, supposedly for bingo money. Others recounted being sold and forced into labor under harsh conditions on farms, even chained in some instances. In the aftermath, descendants of the Chalafou children have endeavored to trace their family roots, seeking to reconnect with lost relatives. Anneliese Michel, a devout Catholic teenager from Germany in the late 1960s, lived a seemingly ordinary life until she began experiencing alarming symptoms. Initially blacking out at school, she soon exhibited increasingly bizarre behaviors, including convulsions, hallucinations, and even consuming spiders and her own urine. Convinced she was possessed by the devil, Michelle's parents shared her belief and sought the help of Catholic priests. Over a span of time, she underwent a staggering 67 exorcisms in attempts to rid her of the perceived demonic influence. Sadly, none of these rituals alleviated her condition. Tragically, Michelle succumbed to malnutrition at the young age of 23 in 1976, weighing a mere 68 pounds at the time of her death. Her harrowing ordeal captured public attention and later served as inspiration for the 2005 horror film The Exorcism of Emily Rose. And what happens when your joyful moment turns into a complete nightmare? In 1997, 39 members of the Heaven's Gate sect ended their lives in a mass suicide in California. Led by Marshall Applewhite, the group believed in reaching a higher existence beyond Earth, awaiting aboard a starship they thought would trail the Hale-Bopp comet. Applewhite convinced his followers, who revered him, that a utopian planet awaited them in another realm. On the designated day, each member consumed a lethal mix of sleeping pills, apple pure, and vodka. To ensure death, they placed bags over their heads. Remarkably, Applewhite was among the last to perish, indicating his commitment to the ideology he propagated. The aftermath revealed a chilling uniformity. All wore Nike sneakers and armbands bearing the sect's name. The tragedy shocked the world, shedding light on the dangers of extremist beliefs and charismatic leadership. But next, what secrets did Rasputin take to the icy depths of the Neva River? Grigory Rasputin's life remains steeped in mystery, with conflicting views portraying him both as a saintly healer and a sinister figure. Rising from a wandering monk to a trusted advisor to the Russian Tsar, Rasputin's life culminated in a death as enigmatic as his existence. According to accounts by his killers, Felix Yusupov and Dmitry Pavlovich, Rasputin endured a gruesome demise. They first poisoned him with cyanide, then shot him multiple times. Despite these attempts, they resorted to crushing his head with an iron rod and finally drowning him in frozen water. Remarkably, when his body was recovered from the river in St. Petersburg, water was found in his lungs, suggesting he was still alive when he drowned. The famous photograph of Rasputin's body, as Eduard Rajinsky describes, captures his hands in a posture that appears defiant towards the city and the sky. This gesture seemed prophetic, as within a year, the Romanov dynasty faced its tragic end, forever altering Russian history. While debates persist about the precise circumstances of Rasputin's death, historians generally agree that his assassination marked a pivotal moment in history. In the 1920s and 1930s, Professor John Papji dazzled audiences with his creation, Radiana, the Iron Man. Radiana featured robotic arms crafted from human bones, purportedly controlled remotely by Professor Papji. This marvel of engineering could assist in flying planes, driving cars, baking cakes, and even shaving faces. However, the true magic behind Radiana lay not in Professor Papji's ingenuity, but in his assistant, a young woman named Kat. For 3 years, Kat concealed herself within Iron Man, manipulating its movements to awestruck spectators. Over time, Professor Papji grew fond of Kat and proposed marriage, but she declined, ending their relationship forever. In a photo from around 1927, a 21-year-old Kat is seen hidden inside Iron Man, illustrating her pivotal role in bringing Radiana to life. Her skill and dedication enabled Professor Papji to captivate everyone with seemingly miraculous feats. What led a daring teenager to the brink of disaster high above the clouds? The photograph captured everything, but the true tale unfolds beyond the frame. On February 22, 1970, 14-year-old Kate Sapsford ran away from her Sydney boarding school and attempted an adventurous trip to Japan by hiding in an airplane's wheelhouse. Little did she know, the compartment opened mid-flight to retract the wheels, causing her to fall from a height of 60 meters. Fortunately, photographer John Gilpin was at the right place at the right time, capturing the moment as he photographed the plane. When developed, the image revealed the startling incident. Gilpin's photo quickly gained fame after being sold to Life magazine, making headlines worldwide and enduring as one of history's most iconic images. Hannah Schmatz, a German mountaineer, achieved the feat of becoming the 4th woman to summit Mount Everest. However, her triumph was overshadowed by tragedy when she became the first woman to perish on the mountain's summit. In 1979, along with her husband, Schmatz embarked on the challenging ascent. Despite successfully reaching the summit, their descent proved perilous. Exhausted and battling the harsh elements, Schmatz succumbed to fatigue and cold. Years after her death, Schmatz's body remained where she fell, resting against her backpack. Weathered by time, her hair disheveled and her eyes hauntingly open, her presence on the mountain became a somber reminder of the dangers climbers face. Hikers passing by reported feeling as though her eyes followed them, adding to the eerie aura surrounding her final resting place. In 1981, attempts were made by Nepali climbers to retrieve her body, but tragically, one member of the group lost their life in the effort. Ultimately, nature intervened when strong winds eventually carried Schmetz's remains down the Kangshung Glacier, or the east face of Everest, ensuring that her body would no longer be visible to future climbers. Robert Ben Rhodes, infamously known as the Truck Stop Killer, is suspected of committing over 50 murders of women and girls across America during the 1970s and 80s. His victims were often prostitutes and vulnerable women whom he abducted while driving his commercial trucks. Rhodes would subject them to weeks or even months of torture and sexual assault before ultimately ending their lives. One of his most horrific acts occurred in 1990 when he abducted 14-year-old Regina K. Walters. After taking her to a barn in Illinois, Rhodes captured chilling photographs of her moments before her tragic death. These photographs, depicting Walters in palpable fear, were later discovered by police in Rhodes' home following his arrest months later. Robert Overacker's bold mission over Niagara Falls ended in tragedy. But was his fatal plunge a sacrifice for awareness, or a chilling misstep in pursuit of the extraordinary? Robert Overacker attempted to cross Niagara Falls in October 1995, aiming to raise awareness for the homeless. His plan involved riding a jet ski into the water, then deploying a parachute as he went over the falls. Sadly, the parachute malfunctioned, and the 39-year-old Californian plunged 180 feet to his death in the river below. Niagara Park's police officer Thomas Dentonbeck described the impact as like hitting cement, highlighting the devastating force of the falls. Overacker's tragic death served as a poignant reminder of the risks involved in such daring stunts and the unpredictable nature of natural landmarks like Niagara Falls. On August 6, 1945, Hiroshima, Japan witnessed a cataclysmic event that altered the course of history. The United States dropped an atomic bomb on the city, instantly taking the lives of approximately 80,000 people and leaving behind a devastating aftermath. Among the eerie remnants were haunting shadows etched onto sidewalks and buildings, reminders frozen in time of those who perished in an instant. When the bomb detonated 1,900 feet above Hiroshima city center, it unleashed a blinding explosion with temperatures soaring up to 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This immense heat obliterated everything within 1,600 feet of the blast, leaving only stark shadows where people and objects once stood. The intense light and heat were so extreme that they scorched and bleached surfaces, except where individuals shielded the ground or walls from the bomb's wrath with their bodies. These shadows, found etched into concrete or stone, are poignant artifacts of the human toil of nuclear warfare. They offer a silent, yet powerful testament to the unimaginable horror experienced by the city's residents on that fateful day. Similar to the casts of Pompeii's victims preserved by volcanic ash, these shadows capture the final moments of ordinary lives interrupted by an unprecedented force. Dr. Michael Hartshorn, an expert from the National Museum of Nuclear Science and History, explains that the shadows were formed as the intense light and radiation from the bomb were blocked by objects and people, leaving behind outlines of what was once there. The surrounding areas, exposed to the full force of the bomb, were bleached, creating a stark contrast that highlighted these dark imprints. Evelyn McHale's graceful descent from the Empire State Building in 1947 captivated everyone worldwide. Robert Wiles captured The Most Beautiful Suicide in 1947, an iconic photograph published in Life magazine. The image features Evelyn McHale, who tragically jumped from the Empire State Building. Unlike typical depictions of death, Wiles' photo emphasizes her beauty over the tragedy. This blurring of documentary and aesthetic purposes raises questions about the ethics of such representations. McHale's serene posture on the wrecked car, her legs crossed and gloved hand clutching her necklace, creates an illusion of peaceful rest. Wearing fashionable attire typical of the era, she embodies the idealized feminine beauty of post-war America. The frontal perspective accentuates her body's form, contrasting sharply with the grim reality of her death. The photograph's allure lies in freezing McHale's body just before decomposition, preserving her beauty in death. This contradicts our aversion to decay, offering viewers a sanitized encounter with mortality. Elizabeth Brophen suggests that such images allow viewers to confront death indirectly, reaffirming their own mortality while distancing themselves from it. Contextualizing McHale's death within post-World War II America reveals societal shifts towards idealized femininity propagated by mass media. Magazines like Life promoted a slender, glamorous image embodied by McHale. This idealization continued in artistic adaptations like Andy Warhol's Suicide. However, ethical concerns arise from exploiting McHale's death for commercial and artistic gain. Similar to historical cases like Ellen Jewett's murder lithograph in 1836, McHale's photograph minimizes the tragedy for aesthetic appeal. This commodification of tragedy challenges our moral sensibilities, prompting calls for ethical guidelines in media representation. But what started as a study on human behavior quickly spiraled into an ethical crisis. How far can power corrupt in just 6 days? The Stanford Prison Experiment, conducted in 1971 by psychologist Philip Zimbardo, aimed to explore human behavior in simulated prison conditions. Divided into guards and prisoners, the participants quickly adapted to their roles, revealing startling insights into power dynamics and social behavior. Lasting only 6 days due to escalating abuse, the guards, initially ordinary students, transformed into tyrannical figures. They subjected the prisoners to degrading tasks and psychological torment, such as forced cleaning and humiliation. This rapid descent into cruelty highlighted how ordinary people can exhibit extreme behavior under situational pressures, challenging assumptions about innate human goodness. The experiment's abrupt halt showed ethical concerns and the unforeseen intensity of roleplay. Despite its short duration, it left a profound impact on psychology. During the 1920s, hundreds of young women who painted watch dials with radium-based paint in American factories faced devastating consequences. Initially assured of its harmlessness, they unknowingly ingested deadly radium while shaping brushing tips with their lips. This resulted in severe health issues. Bones disintegrated, jaws swelled, and lives were cut short by agonizing cancers. The luminous paint they used contained radium, which caused radiation poisoning. Despite knowing the dangers, factory owners misled them. The women suffered cancers, bone fractures, and teeth loss. Their skin glowed from radium long after exposure. In New Jersey, 5 women sued their employer and settled out of court in 1928. In Illinois, others won damages in 1938. Imagine a dog with not one, but two heads. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but this was real-life Soviet science at its most audacious. In 1954, Soviet scientist Vladimir Demikhov stunned the world with his bizarre experiment, creating a two-headed dog. Demikhov wasn't your typical scientist. He had a knack for pushing boundaries and thinking outside the box. His laboratory was his playground, where he tinkered with surgical tools and dreamed up wild ideas. He started by selecting stray dogs from the streets of Moscow, unsuspecting candidates for his groundbreaking experiment. With precision and care, he performed surgeries that merged two heads onto a single body. It was a delicate dance of stitching, sewing, and connecting nerves and blood vessels. When the operation was complete, the result was astonishing. The two-headed dog could see, hear, smell, and even swallow from both heads. It was a spectacle that both amazed and perplexed onlookers, raising questions about the limits of scientific possibility. However, despite the initial success, Demikhov's creations faced ethical scrutiny. Critics questioned the morality of such experiments, debating whether the pursuit of scientific knowledge justified the manipulation of life in this way. The dogs, sadly, didn't live long. On September 20th, 1988, Tara Calico, a 19-year-old from New Mexico, set out for her routine bike ride along State Road 47. Her mother, Patty Dole, usually accompanied her, but had recently felt uneasy due to a suspicious motorist tailing them, so she stayed home that day. Tara jokingly warned her mother to come looking for her if she didn't return by noon. When noon passed without Tara's return, worry set in. Patty searched frantically along their usual route, but found no trace of her daughter or her distinctive pink bike. The police were called, but their search yielded no concrete leads. Patty seemed to have vanished into thin air. Months later, in June 1989, a chilling discovery intensified the mystery. A Polaroid photo found in a Florida parking lot over 1,400 miles away showed a young woman resembling Tara and a young boy, both bound and gagged. The eerie resemblance and corroborating details suggested it could be Tara, but the photo's origin and authenticity remained uncertain. The picture hinted at a sinister twist to Tara's disappearance, sparking renewed interest and speculation. However, despite extensive searches and investigations, Tara Calico has never been found, leaving her family and investigators grasping for answers. Over the years, theories emerged, ranging from abduction to voluntary disappearance. Yet, without any conclusive evidence, the case has lingered as one of the most perplexing cold cases in modern American history. The emotional toll on Tara's family has been immeasurable, compounded by the lack of closure and the haunting image that surfaced months after her disappearance. Today, more than 3 decades later, Tara Calico's fate remains a mystery. But in the 1970s, Joachim Kroll's reign of terror in Germany horrified an entire nation. Joachim Kroll, known as the Ruhr Cannibal, terrorized Germany from 1955 to 1976. He brutally took the lives of at least 14 individuals, from a child of 4 to a person aged 61. His gruesome method involved strangulation, followed by disturbing acts of necrophilia and cannibalism. In a shocking discovery, police found human intestines blocking the plumbing of Kroll's apartment building in 1976. This led to his capture. A chilling photograph taken post-arrest shows Kroll reenacting one of his heinous crimes for investigators. In 1996, Beck Weathers faced a life-or-death struggle on the slopes of Mount Everest. So what drove him to keep fighting against nature's deadliest forces? In May 1996, Beck Weathers faced the ultimate challenge on Mount Everest. Despite being so close to the summit, he suffered severe snowblindness during a brutal blizzard. Exposed to a chilling wind of 100 degrees below zero, he slipped into a hypothermic coma. Both his hands and nose suffered frostbite, leading to later amputation. Miraculously, he survived against all odds. He managed to walk back to camp, where he was eventually airlifted for medical treatment. Omaira Sanchez, just 13, faced a tragic end in 1985 due to a volcanic eruption. She lived in Armero, Colombia, when disaster struck. The Nevado del Ruiz volcano erupted, triggering lahars that destroyed entire villages. When the lahar hit, Omaira found herself trapped under debris, water rising around her. Rescue efforts began, but her legs were pinned under heavy concrete. Despite the ordeal, she remained remarkably calm. Initially, days passed with Omaira stuck, her situation worsening. Journalists captured her struggle, bringing global attention. Her resilience and plight touched hearts worldwide. People empathized with her suffering and the struggle to save her. As time passed, hope dwindled. Omaira's resilience turned to despair. She sang, asked for sweets, and spoke to journalists, but her condition deteriorated. The rescue team faced an impossible choice: amputate her legs to save her, or let her pass peacefully. Tragically, after 60 agonizing hours, Omaira passed away. Her death became a symbol of the failures in disaster response. The world mourned her and questioned the authorities' preparedness. Frank Fournier's photograph of Omaira became iconic, winning awards for its poignant portrayal of her final hours. It sparked global discussions on disaster response and humanitarian aid. At last, who is this boy with glowing white eyes? Is it a ghost, or is it just a friction image? In 1976, inside the infamous Amityville horror house, a paranormal photo shocked the world. After a tragic murder, George Lutz moved in and reported hauntings. He called Ed and Lorraine Warren for help. Late one night, their camera captured a chilling sight: a ghostly boy on the second floor. Many speculate it's the spirit of John DeFeo, murdered years earlier by his brother. Now, after watching this video, if you're feeling a bit scared, then I wouldn't recommend watching something even creepier on your right-hand side.